Kunja Vihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Rajajanarandana Yashodanandana Rajajanarandana Jamuna Chirapanuchari Chirapanuchari Raja Madhava Kunja Vihari Raja Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Rajajanarandana Yashodanandana Rajajanarandana Lamuna Chirapanuchari Yamuna Chirapanuchari Raja Madhava Kunja Vihari Raja Madhava Kunja Vihari Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Raja Govinda, Raja Govinda, Raja Govinda, Shri Radhe, Raja Govinda, Raja Govinda, Shri Radhe, Raja Madhava, Raja Madhava, Raja Madhava, Shri Radhe, Raja Madhava, Raja Madhava, Raja Madhava, Shri Radhe, Jaya Pancha Tattva, Pancha Tattva, Pancha Tattva, Pancha Tattva, Pancha Tattva, Pancha Tattva, Jaya Pancha Tattva, Pancha Tattva, Jaya Nida Sachinandana, Gaura Hari, Nida Sachinandana, Gaura Hari, Nida Sachinandana, Gaura Hari, Nida Sachinandana, Gaura Hari, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnupan Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Stotana Satyashi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki.
Jai.
ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki.
Jai.
Ananda Kota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki.
Jai.
Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki.
Jai.
Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki.
Jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Hare Hare Bol.
All glories to the assembled
Hare
devotees.
Krishna.
All glories to the assembled
Hare
devotees.
Krishna.
All glories to the assembled
Hare
devotees.
Krishna.
All glories to Shri Shri Guru and
All
Gauranga.
glories, all glories. Sri Sri Guru, Sri Guru.
Swami Chinamani Namaste Saraswati Devi. Good morning and welcome to the Tuesday morning Bhagavatam class. I have the Bhagavad Gita in my hand. And we're continuing today in the first canto, chapter 9. entitled The Passing Away of Bhishmadev. So we will go through the verse, the Sanskrit, and then we can read the translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Svanigamam. Actually, do them word for word. Svanigamam.
Svanigamam.
Apahaya.
Apahaya.
Mat pratigyam.
Mat pratigyam.
Svanigamam apaya mat pratigyam. Ritam.
Ritam.
Adhikartam.
Adhikartam.
Avapluto.
Avapluto.
Rahasta.
Rahasta.
Ritam adhikartam avapluto ratasta. Ritam adhikartam avapluto ratasta. Drita.
Drita.
Rata.
Rata.
Charano.
Charano.
Vyayach.
Vyayach.
Chaladgur.
Chalagur.
Drita rata charano bayach. Vyayach chaladgar. Gur. Drita rata charano vyayach chaladgur. Harir.
Harir.
Iva.
Iva.
Hantam.
Hantam.
Ipam.
Ipam.
Gatotarya.
Katatarya.
Harir Eva Hantam Ipam Gatotarya. Gatotarya. Quite an interesting verse. Difficult to know. Svanigamam apayamat pratikyam uritam adikartam avaplutoratasta tritarata vyayach chaladgur. Harir Eva Hantam Ibham Gatotarya. Svanigamam Apaya Mat Pratikyam Uritam Adikartam Avapluto Ratasta Tutarata Charano Vyajach Chaladkur. Harir Eva Hantam Ibham Gatotarya. And the word for word translation. Svanigamam.
Svanigamam.
Own truthfulness.
Own truthfulness.
Apahaya.
Apahaya.
For nullifying.
For nullifying.
Mat pratigyam.
Mat pratigyam.
My own promise.
My own promise.
Ritam.
Ritam.
Factual.
Factual.
Adi.
Adi.
More.
More.
Kartam.
Kartam.
For doing it.
For doing it.
Avapluta.
Avapluta.
Getting down.
Getting down.
Ratashta.
Ratashta.
From the chariot.
From the chariot.
Drita.
Drita.
Taking up.
Taking up.
Rata.
Rata.
Rat is
Cart.
chariot. Chariot, yes. Innis rat.
Yeah.
Chariot on the island. Yeah. Charana.
Charana.
Wheel.
Wheel.
Abhyavat.
Abhyavat.
Went hurriedly.
Went hurriedly.
Chaladgu.
Chalagu.
Trampling the earth.
Trampling the earth.
Hari.
Hari.
Lion.
Lion.
Eva.
Eva.
Like.
Like.
Hantam.
Hantam.
What's that? Hunter. To kill. Ipam.
Ipam.
Elephant.
Elephant.
Gata.
Gata.
Leaving aside.
Leaving aside.
Uttarya.
Uttarya.
Covering cloth.
Covering cloth.
Okay. So the translation. Fulfilling my desire and sacrificing his own promise, he got down from the chariot, took up its wheel, and ran towards me hurriedly, just like a lion goes to kill an elephant. He even dropped his outer garment on the way. Who's speaking? Yeah, Bhishma.
About Bhishma.
Purport. The Battle of Kurukshetra was fought on military principles, but at the same time in a sporting spirit, like a friend's fight with another friend. Duryodhana criticized Bhishmadev, alleging that he was reluctant to kill Arjuna because of paternal affection. A Kshatriya cannot tolerate insults on the principle of fighting. Bhishmadev therefore promised that the next day he would kill all 5 Pandavas with special weapons made for the purpose. Duryodhana was satisfied, and he kept the arrows with him to be delivered the next day during the fight. By tricks, Arjuna took the arrows from Duryodhana, and Bhishmadev could understand that this was the trick of Lord Krishna. So he took a vow that the next day Krishna would have to take up weapons himself. Otherwise, his friend Arjuna would die. In the next day's fighting, Bhishmadev fought so violently that both Arjuna and Krishna were in trouble. Arjuna was almost defeated. The situation was so tense that he was about to be killed by Bhishmadev the very next moment. At that time, Lord Krishna wanted to please his devotee Bhishma by keeping Bhishma's promise, which was more important than his own. Seemingly, he broke his own promise. He promised before the beginning of the battle of Kurukshetra that he would remain without weapons and would not use his strength for either of the parties. But to protect Arjuna, he got down from the chariot, took up the wheel of the chariot, and hurriedly rushed at Bhishmadev in an angry mood, as a lion goes to kill an elephant. He dropped his covering cloth on the way, and out of great anger, he did not know that he had dropped it. Bhishmadev at once gave up his weapons and stood to be killed by Krishna, his loving lord. The fighting of the day was thus ended at that very moment, and Arjuna was saved. Of course, there was no possibility of Arjuna's death because the Lord himself was on the chariot. But because Bhishmadev wanted to see Lord Krishna take up some weapon to save his friend, the Lord created the situation, making Arjuna's death imminent. He stood before Bhishmadev to show him that his promise was fulfilled and that he had taken up the wheel. Shri Chaitanya Mano Vishtam Stabitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupakadam Ayam Tadati Svapatantikam Om Vishnu Vinaya Krishna Prasad Bhutale Srimate Sattva Swami Bhutale Namo Vishnu Vinaya Krishna Prasad Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Bhutale Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Vacharani Nirvishesha Shamyavadi Pasjata Deshatayani Vajikava Turubis Chakra Sindhava Chakra. So this is a very graphic scene. It is taken up one of our paintings that we got done specifically for the opening of Innisfree back in 1986. Was this very scene, and at one point some of the buddies were a bit worried. We kept it in the little foyer. As you walk in the door, there's a little kind of the shop where the shop is at the moment. And we had this big two pictures of Bhishmadev. One Bhishma lying down on a bed of arrows, and the other was Krishna heading towards Bhishma with the wheel in his hand, and Arjuna hanging on to him. And then as Bhishma says at this point that the cloth was falling on the ground, but Bhishmadev was there. He had dropped all his weapons when he saw Krishna coming, and of course brilliant pictures to discuss with people about the philosophy in a certain sense, or to remind one of the philosophy. But for newcomers, it was this is God. He's about to kill this guy here. He's a very noble person, but he got on the wrong side of the fight, and this is Arjuna who he's trying to save, you know. But ultimately, we're non-violent. So it's very, very, very nice. Very, very nice picture, though. It was actually fantastically executed. But it was directly from one of the BBT pictures, so I'm not sure who actually painted that. But this one was painted on a huge scale, so it was excellent. It was a fantastic painting, because you really do get. I mean, I still see it today when this is being described. I see it as a beautiful picture of Krishna, and Krishna was rushing towards Bhishma. And Arjuna, again, very attractive Arjuna, but he was hanging on to Krishna. Don't do it, Krishna, don't. You're not supposed to fight. He was trying to protect Krishna's promise as well, not to fight. I suppose that's a little bit similar to when Lord Chaitanya had the Sudarshan Chakra and was about to kill Jaga and Madai, and yet Lord Nityananda was holding him back and saying, no, not for this age, you're not to do it for this time. So so Krishna is in twice, that's two instances where Krishna was, for the sake of his devotees, he was prepared to annihilate even the opposition, but somehow or other by his higher cause was served by him not doing so. And so there we get the whole point of the relationship between Krishna and his devotee. And we have Arjuna, in one sense he's trying to hold Krishna back from breaking his promise, but there's Krishna and he's about to break his promise just to fulfill the promise of Bhishma Dev. So it's this kind of very intimate interrelation between Krishna and his devotees is something which we're really starting to learn more about, especially during this month of Damodar, especially because we're reading Sri Ramaswamy's book in the evening time, Sri Damodarastika Janani, I think it's called. And in this we see that it's microscopically analysing this whole Damodar Leela, and this Mother Yashoda binding Krishna and Krishna being tied to the wooden grinding mortar, and all the different thoughts that go on between Krishna and his devotee, and all the way Krishna's thinking about his devotee, and then you have it from different perspective of the demigods looking on and the conversation between them. Surely Krishna's not going to do this, but sure, Krishna's the supreme personality of Godhead. Why is this woman who's a gopi trying to bind him? You know, all of these different questions are put in it's like it's theatrical. You know, Sri Ramanuja at the start spends about 70 pages explaining the process that he's used to describe this pastime. If you ever wanted to see an analytical study of how to go about things, it reminds me actually of Tamal Krishna Maharaj when he made this play of Lord Jagannath, and we actually put on this play one time at a Ratha Yatra, and or we put on one chapter. It was a massively long play, but he also explains all the different reasons that he did put in different devices and so on. So these Vaishnavas, they're very very particular, very astute, very painstaking, scrutinizing in the way they're presenting the Damodar or the Jagannath Leela, and they give all the reasons why they do the different things. So very, very enlivening. If anybody who's anyway scholarly minded and is reading this particular section of Sri Ramaswamy's Damodarastika Leela, Sri Damodarastika Janani, that they would be very well served by looking into all the different notes, because after each chapter there's so many notes, and as I said at the beginning of the book, there's 70 pages explaining the different techniques and the reasons why he chose different ways of explaining this. So anyway, as I was saying, the demigods are having conversations about themselves. The birds are speaking among themselves, the parrots. So it gives us great insights into actually all of these wonderful pastimes. And this is what a lot of these books do, that of course, you know, we know that the main books are the Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Samhita, Nectar Devotion, and that's sufficient. But we know as well that these books are also drawn, like Nectar Devotion is Sri Rupa Goswami's. He draws on all of these other literatures, the ones that he wrote themselves, or that they wrote themselves, that the Goswamis wrote themselves, and all the further and further insights into what was actually going on. Because we know the Bhagavatam was spoken in 7 days, but if we read the Bhagavatam, it might take us less than 7 days. But you know, there's all different aspects that are going on there as well, and so much non-stop study. So if we as devotees can get ourselves into the position that instead of being excited or distracted by the material world, and instead get attracted by all these commentaries by the devotees, or by the meditations on the Bhagavatam, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Bhagavad Gita, then that pleasure that we will get from hearing those books will be much, much greater than the pleasure that is, so-called pleasure, that is available in the distractions of the material world, which keep us bound here for many lifetimes, for millions of lifetimes, in fact. So the intimate relationships that we have here, Prabhupada is going into in detail of how Bhishma is having his relationship here with Krishna, and Bhishma has won. You know, in one sense he's won, even though he's going to be defeated. He's won because he got Krishna to break his promise. But he was getting Krishna to break his promise just to show how great Krishna is, because he's prepared to break his promise to please his devotee. So, and to save his devotee as well, you know, because he's saving Arjuna. He's forced that Arjuna had to, or that Krishna had to intervene to save Arjuna as well. And there is another pastime which is referred to here, and that's the point of where Duryodhana, Prabhupada refers to in the purport. He goes to, in the evening time, to Bhishma Dev, and he tells Bhishma, listen, get the finger out. You're not fighting on our behalf. You're absolutely holding back here. It's just because of your affection for the Pandavas that you're not fighting like you should. Otherwise, all these Pandavas would have been killed long ago. So why are you doing this? You're supposed to be a Kshatriya. So again, as we hear from the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada talks about Duryodhana being very diplomatic. So because he's first of all, he praises Bhishma as saying he's unconquerable, but then he tells the other people, but we all must get together and protect Bhishma. So Prabhupada says this, that he's very diplomatic in the way he works. He's a politician. So again, he's using his politics here to try to get to rile Bhishma into action. Of course, Bhishma doesn't need it, but when he does hear it, he becomes very stung, because this is his service, or his dharma. And so then he tells Arjuna that he will get 5 different arrows, and each one he will kill the Pandavas. So Duryodhana was, as they say, beside himself with joy. So, but he was worried because he thought something might happen to the arrows. So therefore he took the arrows with him and didn't let them stay with Bhishma, and he was going to return them to Bhishma the next day, just in case something would happen. But of course Krishna was aware of everything that was happening, and then Duryodhana had a very, which is quite unusual, he's sticking by his promise. He made a promise to Arjuna that he would, because Arjuna saved his life when the Gandharvas were going to kill all the Kurus, Arjuna came with his brothers and saved Duryodhana's life. So Duryodhana said that he would give him a boon, or he would do whatever he would want. And so this was the time that Krishna knew that was the time to call in the chips, you know, and to say to Duryodhana, now's the time, I want you to do something for me. So Arjuna went in the middle of the night, or was maybe just when the battle was over, and went to see Duryodhana. And of course, because of the particular code of the Kshatriyas, they were very friendly after the war. And Prabhupada refers to that in the beginning. I can't find it here now at the moment. Oh yeah, military principles, but at the same time a sporting spirit. So they had this sporting spirit. So he went there and he said that, so I have come to get that boon I want. And Duryodhana said, oh, so you come, so do you want to have your kingdom back? I will give it to you. You know, in other words, the whole war was fought on those principles. Like, you know, that he wouldn't give him his kingdom back, but now suddenly he's about to give him his kingdom back. But it is said that Duryodhana said that in a derisive way. He was very derisive. He was kind of condescending, cynical, because he knew that once the war started, that the Kshatriya cannot withdraw from the fight until he wouldn't, then out of generosity take the kingdom. Because he's a Kshatriya, now he had to take the kingdom back. So Arjuna was not going to accept that as a boon for him. So he said, no, that's not what I want the 5 arrows that you have. I want those 5 arrows. And so Duryodhana had to give them. He had to give them the 5 arrows. So those 5 arrows, if they were allowed to stay in the game, they would have killed all the Pandavas. But because Krishna knew about the existence of the arrows and about what Bhishma had done, and that he had given them to Duryodhana, then Arjuna got them back, and therefore he wasn't to be killed that way. And of course, when Bhishma heard about this, he knew that Krishna was involved. He knew that Krishna was not going to let his Pandavas be killed, and so that's why he made this vow that before the end of the day that he will kill Arjuna, unless, of course, Krishna could intervene, because that was the only way that he wouldn't have killed Arjuna that day. And it is said that it's coming to the very end of the day. Arjuna was almost defeated. The situation was so tense that he was about to be killed by Bhishma Dev. He was about to be killed by Bhishma Dev. So Krishna had to intervene. So that's the second pastime that's referred to in the verse. There's the very intimate relationship between Krishna and Bhishma Dev, and then secondly there's this Krishna was going to break his promise, and that how he had known about the arrows, and that how he saved Arjuna in that way as well. And it's funny, I think this is important as well, because it's referred to in the purport that, and it's referred to in the verse, how Bhishma, how he refers to Krishna dropping his cloth. This is a major thing for him, and I'm sure there is some greater significance to this, because it's referred to here, and Prabhu refers to it in the purport. I take it just as a just on its face value, that it's an incredible image of Krishna coming towards him, and because that's also in that painting, that the cloth is on the ground, Krishna's cloth is there. So it is in a sense that Krishna had lost all decorum and was just completely intent on killing Bhishma. And then of course, the conch for the end of the fighting came. So therefore Arjuna was saved. He would have been killed unless Krishna intervened. But it's referred to twice, so again the kind of the reason I'm referring to it is that it's very important for us as devotees. Prabhupada refers to it at the end of the Bhagavad Gita as well. Prabhupada, when he's referring to it, he says that one should always think of the two-armed form of Krishna as Shamasunder. So in that way, as devotees, we all have a particular image of Krishna, and that image is not false, it's not imaginary, that's real, that's a real image of Krishna that we have, because that's our Krishna, you could say. Just like Bhishma Dev had his Krishna, of Krishna dropping the cloth running towards him. So we have our Krishna as well, because that is the great boon. And Bhaktaram Yagatavasham Sarva Loka Maheshwaram Suridam Sarva Putanam Gatvanam Shantam Nichati. That Krishna is the greatest friend. And if we understand that he's the greatest benefactor, and he's the possessor of all sacrifice, anything that we do, it's all done for Krishna. So therefore we get some understanding of how important this Krishna is. And then devotees have very intimate, sometimes they have very intimate relationship with their deity in the temple, and again, this is not something imaginary, this is something which is real. Funny, as a Christian, when I was growing up, I grew up in the Catholic tradition, so they had images on the altars, and they had pictures of saints, and of course they had the Stations of the Cross, which was quite a gruesome kind of picture. But there was often saints, St. Anthony's, there was a St. Martin, and they were depicted in various churches. I remember actually when I actually left the Christian thing when I was about 14 or 15, but eventually I came back to it in my very early 20s, and I used to go to some of these churches where there were these saints. There was in the Dominican order is in Garden Street, and it's St. Martin. So I did actually go there sometimes. I was somewhat kind of fascinated by this whole thing. But it was an intimate relationship with a deity, and even when I was a kid, we had these pictures of these glowing pictures in the dark of the Sacred Heart and so on. But you would kind of wake up in the night and see this glowing picture, and it was quite a it was something to get attached to, so where's my wife from the Protestant tradition? She's waving the flag.
No surrender.
She said no surrender. There's like that wasn't necessarily there, but there was. It's quite interesting when I studied some of the. There's a devotee called Shubhananda. He made this study of 6 different scholars studying the Hare Krishna movement, and they were mainly from the Protestant tradition. They actually also had even a deeper understanding of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness than from the Catholic tradition. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But the deity in the temple is very important for us to develop an attachment for our deities at home. If we're in if we're a householder. Prabhupada, I'm just reading this section in the Bhagavatam, whereby Prabhupada talks about the different 9 processes of devotional services, and one of them is how to save and worship in the lotus feet of the Lord. And Prabhupada talks about the deity worship as well, and how important. He says it's necessary, it's essential. He says for householders. So even in our Krishna consciousness movement, there is now. It's quite an interesting situation whereby devotees have very intense kind of home worship, which is wonderful. But also, growing up in Krishna consciousness in our tradition in Ireland one time, and in the UK, one of the senior devotees said that all the devotees should just concentrate on the deity in the temple. We should not spend so much time on our home worship, but we should all be worshipping the deity in the temple. And also, Prabhupada also said that as well. I haven't got the reference, but I have the memory of seeing that reference because it was referred to by the particular devotee. But whatever way it is, we should have a special relationship with the deity in the country, for instance, Radha Govinda, or maybe our Panchatattva, or our Nitai Satyananda. We should have that special relationship there, and we should always have that in our heart, because I'm not going up to Innisfraf every day, or someone who's living in Kerry or Cork, but even with people who worship Radha Govinda, of course, in different parts of the world as well as their main deity. As we know, and so it is that focus, has to be there in Krishna consciousness. This focus on deity worship, because it gives us that intimate relationship with Krishna. Because this is the most important thing in our spiritual life, that we have an intimate relationship with Krishna, and this is what all our philosophy is coming down to. Is because it talks about Krishna conscious. It means that in whatever situation that we're in, we're thinking of Krishna, either through our deity or through our the form in which we meditate on Krishna. We all have that. We all have this vision of Krishna. And Prabhupada said that the pictures in the Krishna book and in all the literature, they're like the windows to the spiritual world. So we see the pictures of Krishna, and in Krishna in his 2-arm form. We have these wonderful pictures of Radha and Krishna, specific ones that are there. Everyone has their own version of it anyway. I won't go into my particular ones, but this is how we meditate on Krishna, our friend, that Krishna is always there for us. He is there, he's in our heart. You know, he's, we all know the verses, the 7:15, 15, 7, 15, 15. Mata Smita Gyanam Apoham Shan Vadaishya Sarvara. Krishna is there in our heart. But that's not just a theoretical verse in the Bhagavad Gita. No, that is a living experience. And that's why even our whole society, the way Prabhu called the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, he talked about consciousness, you know. He didn't talk about some philosophy or some gyan or some, he talked about a consciousness of God. And he said Krishna consciousness. And of course that's where he struck at the very heart of the materialistic society, because the materialistic society, according to science, cannot explain consciousness and is constantly trying to describe things on the basis of matter, inert matter, of course, and that's the only thing that we can experience. But it doesn't talk about the experiencer, who is experiencing, and therefore it is an incomplete science. Obviously it is, because it's the third energy of Krishna. The inferior energy doesn't talk about the marginal or the superior energy of Krishna, from whom all these energies are coming from. So because we're the marginal energy, Krishna wanted us, and Prabhupada wanted us to be focused on that. That marginal energy is different from the inferior energy and is conscious. But what is he conscious of? He's conscious not only of the material energy, which the scientists say is all there is, but he's conscious of the superior energy, which is Krishna. And so therefore, wherever we are, whatever we're doing, whatever situation that we're in, we have to learn how to be conscious of Krishna. And that gets us onto another point here, which is about how Krishna tests us. And why does Krishna test us? And because here is a big test for Bhishma Dev, for Arjuna. You know, what's going on here? There's this big fight going on. These are two of Krishna's intimate friends, and yet there's an absolutely unbelievable fight going on, you know. And it's said that Krishna tests us because he tests his devotee because he wants to show the purity of his devotee. Because that's the only way you can test gold. Gold is a very pure substance, but because there is the tendency to cheat, then it can be mixed with different types of alloys, and to try to make it seem worth more, so you can get more for it. And therefore, gold is one of the ways in which you can test gold is to heat the gold. And if you heat the gold and there's no impurities come out, then you know that it is pure gold. You know, so that is what the relationship with Krishna is with this devotee. Because if Prabhupada didn't undergo all the things he underwent and still be absolutely 100% determined, then we would not appreciate how pure Prabhupada is. But Krishna wanted Prabhupada to go through those things just to show us subsequently how pure Prabhupada is and how we can accept Prabhupada as the Shaktivesh avatar that he is, and that we can actually then have Prabhupada as our focus, not only Krishna as our focus, but Prabhupada as our focus. You know, the founder, Acharya of ISKCON, we're so Prabhupada centered and Prabhupada centric that it's glorified. It's glorified by other mats because they can understand that we are so completely sold out to Prabhupada and what Prabhupada has done, and he's the founder of Acharya in that way. So there's not those things, and you can have your personal relationship with Prabhupada as well. Prabhupada, he reasons it, says that Vaishnavas die while they're still living and sound. Vaishnava dies to living while they learns to spread the holy name around. And he speaks to us, you know, all the time, either through his books, through his service, through so many different ways. In our particular service, Prabhupada comes when we're in danger, and this is what I'm saying about being conscious of Krishna, because the tendency is we can take shelter of so many things when we get into danger. we can take shelter of cursing, you know. Like sometimes when something really heavy happens, suddenly, because of my background, we have this, you know, instant reaction. You know, so much so it's the expletives may appear, and
May?
my wife says may appear, but it's something which we have to understand, that this is the moment of truth. These are the moments of truth, and actually it's very interesting. I find this extremely interesting that this is a test of our Krishna consciousness to see how far we are. It's a test because it's how much do we take shelter of Krishna, and how much do we take shelter of fearfulness of what's going to happen next. I can refer to a couple of instances. One instance, recently I had this where a very expensive painting were lost in the post. It was a series of paintings, and the minute I felt, okay, this is an incident. It goes into the incident room. This is a test coming up here. How am I going to pass this test? And and then I started dealing with this impersonal company, and the company was based in it's a famous US company, but of course they farm out all their business. They have a huge depots in Dublin, but they farm out the
Contracts.
Two things. They farm out their contracts to anybody and everybody apparently, but also their customer service team is based in Lithuania, and the people there are trying to tell you what's happened in Dublin, you know, and they're not really that expert at English, you know, and you are kind of trying to express to them your frustration, and they're giving you their copybook answers, which makes you even more frustrated. And in the meantime, you're disappointing one of your best artists that you finally got after 20 years trying to contact the person, and you've just lost his work. And so in these instances, you have to see Krishna is there, you know, because it doesn't happen by chance. This is all meant to happen. And just the end of the story is that it finally, just as they had declared that it was lost, and after listening to various decibels of my complaints over the phone on many levels, because I insisted that they record all my phone calls just so that their crap service team could understand how off the wall they were. Anyway, just when it was declared lost, the next day I got a phone call. Oh, it's here, it's on its way in. Anyway, so at the same time, you know, obviously I had to express my frustration to try to get them up off their backsides to do something about it. But on another level, I'm just doing this as an example because that's only it's actually a small level. Just say what happens when your close person dies. And then as we've had with His Grace. No, Prabhu, who's got cancer.
Krishna Nandini?
Krishna Nandini and of course another member of the team who's given talks before. Oh God. Anyway, that's my. But like when you got cancer, like for instance, that's like the devotees Krishna Nandini and this other devotee Prabhu. He explained how it really got him into action, how difficult it was, how incredibly difficult it was to deal with it, but at the same time it got him to see things which were incredible in his life, and seeing how Krishna is dealing with him. So this is the point, that our lives are going to be completely centered around these type of activities. We're in the material world, you know, so therefore these things are going to happen anyway, bred by our karma. But then if we take the Krishna consciousness, then this is the way that Krishna we're becoming purified through. It's not it's what's happening to us, it's how we respond to what's happening to us is what is the important thing. And my good friend David Prabhu from he used to say this, It's not the problem that's the problem. It's how to solve the problem. That's the problem. You know, it's this mentality that we have to develop. And at this time, then, we have to judge our Krishna consciousness. And our Krishna consciousness will be based on, one will be based on our sadhana, strong sadhana. It's so important. I just cannot stress in my little 38 years or whatever in Krishna consciousness, the importance of keeping a strong sadhana is. It's the only thing, in my opinion anyway, which can save us from just surrendering to the modes of material nature completely, or surrendering to the lower emotions like lust, anger, greed, envy, illusion, madness. The sadhana, because it just gives us that little bit of hope and faith. These are Christian terms: faith, hope, and charity. You know, that's compassion. It's just these things which allow us to stay above the parapet. You know, above this whole this war. It gives us this transcendental aspect to our lives, despite being in a completely materialistic fog, mire. You know. Sorry, just can I get the time, Michelle?
Just gone 20 past 8.
Just gone 20 past, so I'll stop shortly. It's important to maintain a steady, a positive attitude. Positive not only in the fact that we experience love of Godhead by practicing the process of Krishna consciousness, Kirtan, Vishnu, Smaran, Padasem, Archanam, Bandhanam, Sakyam, Dasyam, Atman, Nivedana. We experience this process so important. He spent 12, 15 pages of a purport explaining all these different things. So we get this experience of Krishna consciousness, but because of our experience of Prabhupada, we'll accept whatever he says, and so far we will perform sadhana, even though if we're not even on the platform that the sadhana is pushing us towards. In other words, the spontaneous stage. But we will do anyway, because we understand that our wonderful guides, Prabhupada and all the Parampara, our spiritual master, the Shastra, all of these ways in which Krishna is speaking to us through the super soul, through the deity. So we fill ourselves with these things, and we do everything which is favourable. We do everything which is favourable to do this, but we avoid things which is unfavourable. Now, we may not be able to avoid everything that's unfavourable because of our conditioning. We're conditioned to do certain things or to act in certain ways. And even if we physically give them up, we subtly will still have an attraction. These things will be there. Let's just face it, they'll be there. And then the most important thing after that is that we don't beat ourselves up about that. We cannot. We're just not ready to hit that stage. But we should even be joyful in that stage. That, oh, there I am again. I'm not at that stage, so I'm going to try even harder. I will try. I will be very understanding. Like sometimes we're very understanding if somebody else has a problem, but we're not with ourselves. So we should be careful about that. We shouldn't try to be ourselves as though we're on the, oh, I'm not a pure devotee, what's wrong, oh, woe is me. So we're not on that level, and we shouldn't go there. We should be always happy, in that sense. We should be joyous. I'll tell you, one reason I find that we should be joyous is that any particular day, not even in any particular hour, any particular minute, any particular second, any particular moment, we have the opportunity to be aware of Krishna and for Krishna to be there with us. This is the philosophy. Even if we can think about that, but we can experience that. Even if we're approaching it today and we have a bad dream, or we had a terrible, nightmare, or we had a pain in our tooth or whatever. I'm not saying that you can just dismiss that, but I'm saying that despite that, we can still find Krishna. And we can find Krishna sometimes in the most intimate way. Look at Queen Kunti. She was the most happy when she was under the most distress. We can't really kind of pretend we're on that platform and wish for that. But we should be in the consciousness to understand that. Don't be afraid. It doesn't matter what's going to happen. it could be imminent death even. It could even be that bad. But really we are not the body, so we should try to avoid being fearful. I have experience of slipping back into fearfulness in traumatic situations, and actually it is not only spiritually damaging, but it's also physically damaging. By being fearful and what's going to happen next, it exudes a kind of a poison into the system. This kind of poison can go into the system by being this fearfulness. And it's toxic. Can turn into anger on some occasions. Anger is an absolutely a toxic substance. Your heartbeat starts. You have a heart attack while you're angry. So. And that's even it's said even which I only found an amazing thing about the body, that the body sometimes goes into overdrive trying to compensate for to defeat a virus in the body. It can get into a state, as so-called seemingly happens in the coronavirus situation, that the body absolutely overcompensates, and then it gets into such a shock state that is more dangerous than the actual virus was itself, because the body is producing too much something or other into the system. So even physically, these things can be effective in that sense. So as devotees, we should be very conscious and careful, and try to always be moderate and be very circumspect about how we're dealing in any situation. In other words, I'm talking about the mode of goodness, but ultimately the Shuddha-sattva, which means beyond goodness, and that we act based on our relationship with Krishna in a spontaneous way. That's what the Shuddha-sattva means. We're in consciousness of Krishna, we're acting in relation to Krishna. Okay, before I stop though, I just want to make that point that this charity aspect of devotee is compassionate towards others. So therefore, he does what Srila Prabhupada's guru said to him. He gives out books about a philosophy. And coming up to the December marathon, and also this idea that devotees in Ireland, one of the things that we're trying to do is give out 1,000 Bhagavad Gitas, in the mood of giving out 2 million Bhagavad Gitas worldwide in the next couple of months. And we've given out 26 out of our 1,000, so we've 974 to give out. That these books are compassion personified, and they are the best vaccine against this material world. They're spending these billions of pounds and making billions of pounds on these vaccines to prevent a virus, but the virus of material life is the worst vaccine, is the worst virus you can have. But the vaccine of the Bhagavad Gita is the most potent. It works every time. It always works. Even a person touches a Bhagavad Gita, they're saved from material life. So we should be, with all our 2 arms, becoming 10 arms, giving out this Bhagavad Gita through compassion. And tell me about it so I can record it so that we can get towards our 1,000 Bhagavad Gitas. But we should do it as a matter of duty to Srila Prabhupada, especially in collaboration with all the other yatras on the planet. We should be making this great edifice, to the Bhagavad Gita. You don't have to have the £2 million to build a temple or whatever. All you have to do is give out a book, €5 or something, or sponsor even a book. Some of our food stalls, Karneshwari and Madin, they will be able to, even if you sponsor, they will be able to have, please take one of these Bhagavad Gitas there. So anyone who's taken up prasadam can take a book. Let's do it. Let's do it. In our takeaway down in Dublin, take away a book. Our devotee down there is doing that as well. So this is the way in which we can attract the attention of Krishna, by actually, and for Krishna to be more in our lives. There's a special energy there, especially coming up to the marathon. the special energy called Krishna becomes alive, and Prabhupada becomes alive when you're distributing his books and so on. So, okay, so thank you very much for listening, and all glories to Srila Prabhupada, and Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai.